the special meeting of the Board of Directors for September 20th, 2023. Getting started, if we can have a roll call.
Happy to do so, Mr. Chairman. Director Harold Williams. Here. Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director and President Scott Houston. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay. Any public comments?
Mr. Chairman, we have not received any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If we have any virtual guests that would like to make a public comment, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Mr. Chairman, I do not see any requests.
And there are no presentations today, or
Staff has no presentations.
then we'll move on to the action calendar. First item up is the award of the agreement for supply and delivery of the filter media anthracite coal. So, Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that?
Yes, this item is 5A, and for this presentation, we have Jason Kung, our operations analyst 2.
Good afternoon, directors. As you all are aware, West Basin treats secondary effluent from the city of Los Angeles' Hyperion wastewater treatment plant to produce 4 different qualities of water at the Edward C. Little facility, one of which is disinfected tertiary, and disinfected tertiary is used for irrigation and is also the source water for each of the 3 satellite plants that serve our industrial customers. The purpose of the disinfected tertiary treatment process is to remove suspended solids in order to meet Title 22 treatment permit limits for turbidity in recycled water. This is partially accomplished through the use of 14 monomedia anthracite filters in a direct filtration process. Filters 1 through 10 are referred to as Train 1, and filters 11 through 14, also known as the converted filters, are referred to as Train 2. And for reference, Train 1 operates with a 48-inch deep anthracite coal bed, and Train 2 operates with a deeper 72-inch deep anthracite coal bed. In the last few years, the Train 2 filters were not in operation due to system hydraulic capacity constraints, needed miscellaneous repairs, and lower disinfectant tertiary water demand as a result of the pandemic, coupled with the Hyperion sewage upset. More recently, the aforementioned miscellaneous Train 2 filter basin repairs have been addressed, and the Title 22 converted filters booster pump station project, which would remove the current hydraulic constraints, is nearing completion. And the Title 22 filters R&R project is set to commence, which would require the maximum number of remaining filters to be operational or on standby. Staff issued an invitation for quote on July 26, 2023, via West Basin's online bid system for needed supply and delivery of 3,100 cubic feet of anthracite coal filter media to replenish media previously removed for the assessment and repair of the undertrays in the Train 2 Title 22 converted filters. And on August 10th, 2023, 3 quotes were received per our West Basin Administrative Code Section 5-2.104 for the purpose of evaluation only. Vendor quotes that qualify for small business enterprises or local business enterprises, those competitive quotations receive a 3% reduction each. After this adjustment, the LBE, or local business enterprise reduction, was applied in this case to achieve our most competitive quotation. And a summary of the submitted quotes and rankings are provided in Table 1 on page 4 for reference. And with that, I'd like to read the recommendation and answer any questions you have, which is staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to purchase filter media from Carbon Activated Corporation for an amount not to exceed $64,689.87, including freight and sales tax.
Great. Thank you. Director Williams, any questions?
Just a quick one, as curiosity. What are the units of this filter material? Is it in cubic something or another?
Cubic feet, correct.
But it doesn't show. I didn't see it.
In the provided quote, or in the quantity that we ordered?
I didn't see it anywhere. How do we order it? How do we pay for it?
Sure. We specified a specific size of media, and the quantity that we ordered was 3,100 cubic feet. And we also specified that they deliver it to the little water recycling system.
because I still don't understand. Did you pay for it? How much you pay per cubic foot?
I don't know the exact unit cost off the top of my head, but I can look at.
Yeah,
it.
And usually we see that, don't we?
Oh,
Does it matter? I
back
mean,
to us with that cost?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, normally you'd like to see that.
yeah, okay, well, if we could.
It is on the online bid system where they submitted their quote. It does have a unit cost. It's correct, it's not in here.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Director, we can add it to the staff report by the time it gets to the board.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Director Deere, you have any? Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you, though.
I don't have any questions on this one. Are you okay with moving this forward to the board?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I have nothing to stop it, yeah, please.
Okay, good to go. Next item up is the approval of amendments to the aquatic chronic toxicity testing contract with WISP USA Environment and Infrastructure. Mr. General Manager.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For this presentation, item 5B, we do have Jamie Malpede, our Water Quality and Environmental Compliance Supervisor.
Thank you, TJ. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, members of the board. I'm here today to present the action item on page 6 of your packet for the approval of amendment for aquatic chronic toxicity testing contract with WSP USA Environment and Infrastructure. The Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board governs regulations for the reverse osmosis brine discharge into the Pacific Ocean through wastewater treatment plant outfalls. The regional board issued a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems, or NPDES, permit for the brine generated at the Juanita Millender McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant to be discharged through LA County's Sanitation District's Joint Water Pollution Control Plant. The permit includes aquatic toxicity testing, which requires unique testing and reporting from specialty labs. Aquatic toxicity testing is performed to determine if an effluent has the potential to adversely affect organisms in a receiving water body, in this case, the Pacific Ocean. These tests are bioassays with varying degrees of effluent concentrations where survival, growth, and reproduction of the organisms are used to determine short-term, acute, or long-term chronic effects of exposure. Chronic toxicity testing on Carson brine is performed annually. West Basin is required to conduct a 3-species sensitivity screening every 2 years to determine the most sensitive species on Carson brine. The species determined from this screening will be used for testing in the subsequent year. The 3 species tested during this screening process include giant kelp, Pacific top smelt, and the red abalone. From these screenings, the red abalone, which is an invertebrate, has been determined to be the most sensitive species. On May 9th, 2019, after a competitive bidding process, West Basin entered into an agreement with Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions Incorporated to perform toxicity testing, and this agreement is W2839. An amendment to their contract was issued on February 9th, 2023 to reflect their name change to WSP USA Environment and Infrastructure. The Regional Board is currently reviewing the district's applications for the renewal of West Basin's NPDES permits for both Carson and Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility. Aquatic testing will likely be required for both of the renewed permits, which are expected to be issued in 2024 to 2025. However, the scope and the frequency is yet to be determined for toxicity testing. The original agreement with WSP was for 5 years through December 31st, 2023 to cover the term of the Carson's NPDES permit. Of the original agreement, an amount of $67,500, approximately $37,000 remains in the contract, as samples have all passed and there has been no need to resample or retest in the last 5 years. The chronic toxicity test for most sensitive species, which in this case is the invertebrate species of the red abalone, is required in early 2024 for the Carson's permit requirements. Under the original contract, the estimated cost of this test is $1,700, $1,700. With an increased cost associated with the testing, including reference species quality assurance sampling, WSP has presented the new cost of $2,550 for this test for one additional year until we receive our reissued brine permit. The cost difference of chronic invertebrate species test is outlined in Table 1 on page 7 of your packet. Staff recommends that the existing contract with available funds to be extended for 1 year with an updated cost schedule to accommodate the continuing testing until the new permits are effective. And the new request, and then at which time a new request for proposal will be issued by West Basin. This will allow continued compliance under current permits, and staff will issue new RFP once the new permits are issued with the new requirements for toxicity testing. Staff anticipates the need for 1 to 3 sample events for an approximate total of $8,000. Additional analysis are added to the budget. In the rare case, exceedances trigger additional sampling or the test failed. To cover compliance during the brine permit renewals for Carson and ECL, WSP provided the new cost schedule for possible tests, which can be found in attachment A on page 9 of your packet. I will now read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to amend agreement W2839 with WSP for 1 year through December 31st, 2024, and B, to approve WSP's adjusted cost schedule for current and new toxicity test requirements for tests conducted in 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. None.
Director Gray, do you have any questions?
No,
You don't
thank
want to
you.
hear about money? Come on, it's really fun.
Is that a sports fish?
All right.
Top smelt. Top smelt. It's not really a sport fish, but more of a bait fish.
So it's not a true fish.
Well, it is a fish.
It's
an
a fish.
invertebrate. It's just not a big one.
Not a big one.
Bigger than
Look
this.
for other fish. How's that? So their cost is going up from $1,500 per test to $2,700? Did I hear you right?
From 1,700 to 2,550. So a
I said 15 to 27, but
$850 difference.
50% increase.
Yes. These tests, the initial contract was out in 2019. So there has been a significant price increase for costs, and there's been more QA/QC required for these tests.
So the test has evolved. It's a more sophisticated test
The
now,
certification for the test is involved, yes.
but the test is the same.
Test is pretty much the same. They're all bioassays. But for ELAP certification for the labs, that has increased quality assurance, quality control testing, and the need for to have a reference species and to conduct quality assurance on that species.
That was the only question I had. So shall we move this forward to the board?
Good idea.
Yeah. So moving right along, the next item up is the Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Project Phase 2 Expansion Project Amendments for Construction Management and Professional Engineering Services. That's a mouthful. All right, Mr. General Manager.
All right, Mr. Chairman, this next item, 5C, begins on packet page 10. And for this presentation, we have Kevin Cullen, our engineer 3.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, members of the committee and board. As you know, construction of the Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant Phase 2 Expansion Project and its custom engineered microfiltration system are ongoing. The project will increase the water supply capacity of the microfiltration process and improve system operability at the plant. Today, I'll be providing a recommendation for 2 amendments on professional services agreements with 2 of our consultants, our construction manager and our design project. Before I dive into the amendments themselves, I'd like to provide a project update and a budget overview. For this item, the memo starts on page 10 and the presentation starts on page 21 of the agenda packet. Next slide, please. I'll start with some recent activities. There's many activities going on site. However, I'd just like to highlight a couple. We recently wrapped up the electrical installation and vendor checkout for our added nitrified product pump. Historically, we've had 2 product pumps for the nitrified system. So this third pump gives us a little bit of added redundancy. The middle picture there shows one of the ongoing issues we're working through on site. The project itself is pretty complex and there's lots of individual vendors and subcontractors. And what we see here is kind of the division of scopes between 2 different vendors and their difference in naming conventions on the wire tagging and some of the corrective work that's going to need to take place. On the left-hand side, you can see a very detailed tag that includes the start point and end point of that wire with all the necessary information. And on the right-hand side, you can see some wires that were delivered incorrectly that'll need to be replaced on the contractor's dime, but just some corrective work that'll need to be done in the panels. And on the right-hand side, you can see that panel and lots of wires in these panels, probably upwards of 1,000. So a lot of detailed work going on site. Next slide, please. Other recent activities, we've been completing a lot of the operator training on site. So we've had vendors from individual pieces of equipment come out and train Veolia operators, as well as any West Basin staff wishing to attend. So on the left-hand side, you can see the training for the sump pumps at our new chemical storage area. And on the right-hand side, you can see the vendor training for the backwash water pumps at the CMF itself. I did want to stop here and highlight a couple other things that have been going on outside the project that I think are worth noting. We did get accepted to present at 2 conferences and highlight the technology as part of the project. The first will be California Water Reuse in Indian Wells on November 6th. And the second is SWMOA, the Southwest Membrane Operators Association, on November 8th in Irvine. So we'll be presenting those presentations along with our design engineer, Hazen and Sawyer. And then another highlight is we recently just wrapped up the documentation for disbursement number 2 for the grant funding on the project. So I think that'll total to about $11.5 million. So that'll be good for funding for the project. Next slide, please. On the construction status itself, we have had a little bit of a hiccup on the schedule side. The base contract for the project was 660 calendar days. Since recent amendments or change orders have been processed with the contractor in the amount of 64 days, bringing us up to June 30th. There is some ongoing negotiations about responsibility for those delays and future time extensions. However, I did want to highlight one particular item that has occurred along with other concurrent items going on site, but it's related to our DCS project and highlights kind of the criticality of some of the infrastructure out there. So a lot of the acceptance testing and commissioning has been progressing well, but we ran into a hiccup with one of our DCS data servers. And ultimately on that data server, there's a developer studio, which allows you to go in there and make changes to the DCS program itself. And unfortunately, we found that the program itself had crashed just due to the age of the infrastructure. The server itself is like, I've heard some people relate it to like Windows 2000. It's a pretty old server. So unfortunately, we had to order a new old stock server, have it rebuilt, and it's held up the uploading of the program on the DCS side. And it's caused about a 4 to 5 week delay on the project. So currently our new projected completion date is out in December 7th specifically. On the cost side, the total contract, including all change orders to date, is about $22 million. To date, the contractor has earned about $19,960,000, about 91% of what's on their contract. We've been processing a lot of RFIs and submittals on the RFI side, processed 325 to date. There's 4 outstanding for a total of 329. On the submittal side, we're just about caught up. There's a total of 371, and we processed 370 to date. Next slide, please. On the PLA, we're still in good standing with our PLA on the approved local percentage. We're meeting that goal for tier 1 of 30%, sitting at about 33.5%. That's local residents within the West Basin service area when the unions haven't been able to provide workers from our service area. We have expanded that to LA County, so that 33.5 is inclusive of those numbers when they aren't available from our service area. On the at-risk side, you can see the description there. Those are at-risk workers that meet 2 of the following criteria listed there, meeting that goal as well, 7.1%. And on the apprentice side, that's a DIR requirement of 16.7%. And we're doing well there, about 23% of the man hours being provided by apprentices. Next slide, please. Here's a breakdown of those numbers, the local residents specifically by tier and division. Most of the hours are coming out of Division 1. You can see the breakdown there by company and vendor on site. Next slide, please. Here again is the same numbers, just broken out by craft and division as well. Most of the hours on site are coming from laborers, electricians, and what's this third one there? Operating engineers. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of where the budget stands today. On the first column there, you have the budget that was set forth on each scope item there. You have the original award. We have change orders on the construction side, amendments on our professional service side, a revised award column, and what has been paid to date. So paid to date, we have about just over 2.2 million outstanding of work to be completed by our consultants and contractors. And these are all numbers that are through July 2022. Next slide, please. Looking forward in context of past discussions we've had with professional services amendment and the desire to get those processed using the remaining contingency budget on the construction side, I wanted to provide a summary of the change orders to date and where that budget stands. So we processed 5 change orders to date. We're lining up a few others. So we have some outstanding PCOs listed there for a total change order exposure of about 1.35 million. On the construction contingency side, we had an original contingency of about $2.1 million. So if you take the difference of the two, there's a remaining contingency budget of roughly $750,000. One past amendment that has been done on the professional services side was a amendment for the CM on back in March 2023 of this year, which took the project, forecasted it out with an August 31st completion date, and we had them providing services through September. And with that extension in project schedule, we are going to need a little bit more budget. So looking at that remaining contingency budget, if we're using the construction contingency, you can see there's about $330,000 remaining, taking into account the total change order exposure. Next slide, please. I wanted to highlight each agreement on the professional services side. So I'll start with Boutier Engineering, who is our construction manager for the project. Their original award was for $1,231,220 with a 10% contingency. You can see their Amendment 1 listed. That included the $417,000 that we processed in March 2023, as well as the previously authorized contingency that was included in Amendment 1. And then you can see highlighted there in red is the requested amendment before the committee today. Some of the items included in the amendment scope of work, obviously includes additional budget for services all the way through our new forecasted completion date, roughly additional 2.5 months. It includes services for 1 construction manager, resident engineer, as well as 2 field engineers. In the original scope of work, we thought that we would be have sufficient coverage with just 1 field engineer. However, there has been an increased level of support to help work through some of the detailed challenges we're working through, like the wire tagging, the DCS issue, and just to really maintain field quality assurance and control. Our contractor has been really good on the project. However, holding them to the high level of standards that we have in our specs is a challenge at time, and Boutier is doing a good job of that. So we're recommending that we keep those 2 field engineers on site and help us get the quality that the district needs. Next slide, please. On the Hazen and Sawyer side, this is an agreement that's been with the district going back to November 2015. And this agreement originally encompassed the two halves of the project, which was both for the CMF as well as the tertiary membrane bioreactor. And their amendments up to date included services through the original completion date of the project, which was in April of earlier this year. So we've really worked with Hazen to stretch that budget as far as possible. And they've gotten, we've had sufficient budget to get us through this month. However, to get through the end of the project and to make sure we get our record drawings up to date and get all the closeout done and their checkouts, there is going to be a need for additional budget. Additional item that I wanted to highlight is we did work with Hazen on a credit that's within this amendment. And that's a credit for $32,000 for in-kind services. And Hazen's really been a good partner on this project. They've helped us a long way. But we did recognize that there were some costly change orders resulting from design decisions. And I think that happens pretty regularly, especially on any project of this complexity. There's going to be a few misses here and there. But we did work with them and they recognized that and they offered to provide that credit of $32,000 for in-kind services to help offset some of those increased costs that we've had during construction. So that's also a part of this amendment. Next slide, please. With that, I'll read the recommendation, if that's all right. Recommendation is that staff recommends the board authorize the general manager to amend professional services agreement W2958 with Boutier Engineering in the amount of $207,285 plus a 10% contingency for a total amount of $228,013.50 for a new total contract amount of $1,979,288.12. And to also amend professional services agreement W2618 with Hazen and Sawyer in the amount of $104,392 plus a 10% contingency for a total amount of $114,831.20 for a new total contract amount of $3,008,662.00. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Williams, any questions?
No, unless the general manager has anything else to add or subtract.
Nothing to add or subtract. I think the presentation and the update on the project was great. This is a project that there are several members of the West Basin team that are closely tracking it, especially when it comes to the construction management and professional engineering services, the invoices specifically, and the costs associated. So I feel confident in staff's recommendation.
That being said, I move this forward to the board.
Director Deere,
Okay.
Director Gray, do you have any questions on this?
No, thank you.
So how close is this project to being finished?
I would say we're very close. We've installed all the equipment, all the wires are in place. We're doing our checks. We're doing loop checks specifically, ensuring equipment is all operating properly. We're getting ready actually next week, hopefully, if we can get the flushing plan blessed by operations. We're going to start flushing the system out. We're going to install the membranes, do the wet test. There's a brief 48-hour test that will occur on each skid, and then we'll jump into a 30-day acceptance testing. So we're very close. I'm expecting to see water through the system probably the end of next month.
So basically, you're in the startup phase in terms of the testing and startup before the contractor turns it over to the district.
Correct. And outside of the CMF, we've already started up individual pieces of equipment like the emergency generator, the individual pumps, chemical storage systems. So now we're really focusing on getting the DCS communicating properly with plant infrastructure so that the new equipment can properly be controlled from the control room and remotely at ECL. And then making sure all that acceptance testing goes to plan. And the schedule really does hinge on that acceptance testing. Our specs require the system to run for for 30 days with 98% runtime. And if the contractor does happen to have more downtime than it required in the spec, they'll need to restart that 30 days.
Can you go back 3 slides from the end? Your slide. So on the construction management support, pretty much it's all startup now. Why do you need to extend the contract to include not only a construction manager, resident engineer, and 2 field engineers? Seems for the amount of work that's left, that's an awful lot of staff.
Yeah, specifically on our field engineering side, we have 2 field engineers. One specializes in electrical and instrumentation, and the other specializes in civil and mechanical work. So specifically, some of the things that I'll say the civil gentleman is working on is our HVAC system is still being installed. We have functioning wall-mounted air conditioning units. However, we have 2 brand new systems going in on the 2 critical electrical buildings. So he's focusing on the installation of that, going through all the mechanical stuff, checking the torquing of bolts for the thousands of bolts in the CMF. We still have to install the membrane, so there's some checks on quality there. On the electrical side, he's working through those challenges with the DCS, those loop checks, literally looking at thousands of points and putting voltmeters on one and checking that this is in the right place, going through the wiring diagrams, making sure those are accurate. And then our construction manager is helping us manage it all, really. He's helping us through the negotiations with the responsibilities of some of those delays that we're working through with the contractor. He's organizing all the work. He's coordinating the impacts operations with, so there's a lot of work that's out there.
I get the instrumentation side. It just seems like, and that's really where the focus of my understanding, based on where you described the project to be, is. So I'm thinking 2 field engineers seems like an awful lot, but you need the 1 engineer right now, especially on the instrumentation and all that.
Yeah.
Kevin, could you describe some of the civil work that disassembly that will also be required?
Oh, sure.
in the project?
Sure. So following the completion of that 30-day acceptance testing, that'll trigger the contractor reaching substantial completion on the project. And the way we have the contract set up is that it's in the contractor's scope to also demo the existing MF once the new CMF is up and running. So that is also included in the contract duration, is the demo and removal of all the old MF between substantial completion and final completion. So that'll be part of the work that he'll need to oversee as well.
By that time, most of that instrumentation work will be wrapped up, and you can flip field engineer.
Correct. Yeah, I do foresee us downsizing to 1 field engineer probably in the month of November.
That's my only real concern. It seems like it's a little bit more staffing required, but thank you for your responses. Okay, we'll go ahead and move that forward as
Concur.
recommended. Okay, on the information calendar is the next item up, and the first item we have is the monthly engineering report.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. Item 6A, our monthly engineering report. For the presentation, I will have Wendell Johnson, our manager of engineering, start us off.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. If you could turn to item 6A or page 34 in your packet. And also page 38 is the page where the actual presentation begins. Just a quick couple of things in the staff report. There's 11 projects that are updated in the staff report, along with 2 additional technical planning reports. And so let's move on to the presentation. Next page. This is our look ahead for October. We're expecting to bring an action item for the distributed control system replacement. CIP number 180. In addition to that, we will be providing 2 informational items, one on the closeout of Title 22 converted booster pump station closeout, CIP 170, as well as information on the 10-year CIP assumption for the cost of service study that is being jointly conducted by finance and engineering and operation support. Next slide, please. Highlighted projects, I have Veronica here, engineering supervisor, to give you an update on the PV pipeline and pump station.
Sure. Thank you, Wendell. Good afternoon, directors. So on the pipeline construction anticipated schedule, we have updated this to include the mobilization to the site by the contractor that occurred on August 28, 2023, and basically started with the setting up of the yard for his equipment. Construction notices for those staging areas were distributed among those most immediate residents. However, all community outreach along the alignment has been done already. And right now, community outreach is going to be focusing on those areas as we move along. We're still waiting for the City of Torrance to issue the final encroachment permit, which is basically on the close to be sent to us. So as soon as that happens, the contractor is going to be starting the potholing and the survey so they can start the trenching. Again, completion right now is still on schedule, projected to be March 22nd of next year. Next slide, please. So on this particular slide is just a summary of the aspects of the construction. It's at 270 calendar days to the date that this document was produced, September 7. There are 73 calendar days. We haven't received any invoices yet, so right now the earned to date is still 0. Maybe next month you will start to see different numbers in regards to the invoicing there. And requests for information, there's been 4 of them which have been all responded, and submittals, again, there were 47 to the day of September 7, and pretty much caught up to those being processed to that date, 45. Next slide, please. These are just pictures of the mobilization site, which is basically the location where the original pump station was going to be located at, also in that mulch area at the Lago Seco Park. And these are, and the picture on the right-hand side is just the construction notice that was sent to or provided to the residents around that area. Next slide. On the pipeline PLA status, again, right now we don't have much going on here because we are waiting for the mobilization to have all those numbers finalized. However, on the next slide, you can see that we had a meeting with the union on August 4, 2023, and basically these are the goals that we are hoping to achieve with the project being implemented. On the next slide, you can see the name of the contractors list, Blois Construction being the prime contractor, and the rest of them being their subs. And letters of assent received up to the day of September 7 when we produced this document, there were 3. So they're coming in as we move on along the project. The next slide. This is just basically the pump station construction schedule. We started advertising on the project and we had our preview meeting today earlier at 11 o'clock. There was 10 attendees. We were using the OpenGov's new platform, in which was actually more contractors that we received this time than the previous time. Again, this is not a mandatory meeting, so there are potential for other contractors to come on board, as well as there are other platforms like our website and LinkedIn, which the project is being advertised. The bids are due on October 31st, and our expectations are to come into the board in November. to have the project awarded. And basically, I believe that the next slide is just still the summary of the original budget for the pipeline and the pump station, and this concludes my presentation.
Just to piggyback on the permit issue with the city of Torrance, I'm in conversation with their city engineer to get them to possibly substantially reduce the cost of the permit or to waive the permit completely. They've asked for some support documentation on how it benefits the city, and we're going to provide them that information. And then they're going to consider, because the permit fee is some $60,000, and we're asking them to either waive the fee completely or substantially reduce it. And we'll have more information on that by the time we have our board meeting next week. Camille is here to give you an update on the fill station.
Thank you, Wendell. Good afternoon, members of the committee. If you follow me.
Excuse me, I'm having trouble hearing the complete reports because they kind of tail off at the end and then lose everything. So could you speak up at the beginning and keep it flowing?
All right, so for this past month, the staff has been working on the logistics of the fill station as we awaited the approvals from all the regulatory agencies. So in August, we were able to run 2 trial runs of the fill station just to ensure all the equipment works. And we were able to verify all the signage and displays are ready to go. We also developed the customer survey that will provide customer feedback, and we will provide that on the website once we are able to determine a launch date. And so on September 1st, we received Division of Drinking Water's conditional approval letter. And recently on September 15th, we received the Regional Water Quality Control Board's conditional approval letter. And on September 13th, we had a Department of Public Health site visit. So we are awaiting their approval letter as well. So if you follow me to the next page. These are just some images from those trial runs. So on the far left is just an image of the fill station. And then in the center is a site layout that we prepared so that we can show staff how to set up on the days that they operate. And then on the far right is a picture of the customer survey that will be provided to all the customers who attend the fill station. And on the next packet page, 53, you'll see the next steps. So as I mentioned before, we did receive a Regional Water Quality Control Board approval letter on the 15th. And then we had a successful site visit with DPH last week, and we are waiting their approval letter. And then we are working with our public information team to coordinate a launch date. So I know they are working with you guys to determine what day is best for you all to attend. And we are on that date. Once that date is established, we'll be able to launch the website ahead of time and promote to the public. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you.
Real quick note, Camille, the conditions that were outlined in the approval, it is a conditional approval by the regional board. They have listed a couple of conditions in there. One of them is a requirement for additional analysis. So we're following up with the regional board to see exactly what they're looking for there. But we want to kind of give you a heads up on that.
What do you think they're looking for?
Izzy, can you describe it? I think you'll describe it better than I would.
There's been an interesting movement, and we're gathering our partners and agencies for an anti-degradation analysis. Anti-deg, as everyone commonly refers to it, is just you have to prove that your water isn't degrading the groundwater. Almost 10 years ago, a bunch of us partners put one WRD, MWD, LA County Sand, a number of partners, we did a big salt nutrient management plan to comply with the recycled water policy, and we did an anti-degradation analysis. But literally in the last couple months, there's been a movement by the board to have that updated, or to also look at to make sure we still have the capacity to put that recycled water in. Now they're applying it broadly, if you can imagine applying it to a fill station where people are taking that. That said, it's their requirement, so we're trying to get together, the group, make a case together. We're stronger sort of in that group atmosphere and make our case. And if not, we'll probably include it in the engineering report, or we'll do a real quick analysis to demonstrate it.
My understanding that condition was also placed on the PV lateral project as well. Right?
It is, and we've been warned it will come on any project unless we do a broad scoping one. So that's where we're kind of getting the band back together, so to say, and see how we can approach this as a team. But yes, you're correct.
Very good. Thank you.
Next slide, please. And next slide. The following slides, the following 4 slides reviews the current CIP for fiscal year 23-24. There's 34 projects listed there, and this gives you a status of each one of the projects, as well as the budget and the money that has been spent in this particular fiscal year or prior fiscal years. Next slide. We're going to go to the end. Next slide. Next slide. And one more slide. Okay. Yeah, and this attachment D is a list of current vendors and contracts or consultants that the department has on board, and the budget of their contract and what has been expended through July 31st, 2023. And if there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you.
This is our presentation.
Director Williams, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Director Deere?
No, thanks.
Director Gray? Okay, I have one question on the recycled water pipeline project, and you may have said it, but it was hard to hear everything that was being said. Today was the pre-bid meeting. How many contractors were at the pre-bid meeting?
We got 10.
6?
10.
1010.
Oh, 10.
10.
I keep hearing 6 by 6. So,
I hope to come back and say we have 6 bids for you.
Exactly. 10 equals 6.
right, so 10 showed up today.
Yes.
Okay, and you guys are gonna follow up with them? So we get good bids this time? Okay. All right, well, thank you. Then moving on, our next report is the operations report.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Item 6B, the monthly operations report will be presented by Susanna Lee, our operations supervisor, Frank Fuchs, our operations supervisor as well.
And I apologize, EJ, I'll go ahead and open some of the bullet points if, while everyone gets set up here. And thank you. Good afternoon, directors. Always our highlights, a look back at the month, at some of the events going on page 61 of your packet there as we get started. We have had, a lot of people are aware that Veolia purchased Suez. It's been a little over a year now, and we've put in some requests for a big audit, and they actually sent over a dozen people down for what they're calling a strike force. It was a true audit of really kind of pulling apart some things from asset management to water quality. And we had a workshop on that to go over some of those things and set priorities and goals moving forward. Quite successful and some good teamwork to make sure that we could move forward by taking a look back. In addition, as mentioned or with Jamie earlier, we are working on the brine permit. So the brine permits, we have 2 of them, and they are due every 5 years. The application process is quite extensive. And then we just received the draft back for ECL. And when you get that draft, you have 30 days to analyze, make comments. We will be making comments. We will be looking at that with a group of people. Then there's a public hearing. We'll get that date in the next update, November, at the regional board. Well, they will hear that and approve it. That's also at those hearings is when your partners or People who oppose that project can come forward. We don't anticipate that, but there are public notices that just went up on our board yesterday, I believe, and at the plant, which is required. We're expecting to then see JMM probably in the next 3 months, so it's moving quick. I will mention with those, we will be giving updates to the board. Those brine permits aren't just a happy have at it. They often have some pretty extensive special studies that may require us to adjust budget, may require us to get outside help for sure. One of the large items we see in there is a climate action plan, which is a pretty extensive first-time requirement. We're trying to get our head around what that involves. But again, we will keep the board updated on that. All good news. In addition, we had, so as we mentioned, we're working on the anti-DEG. We're trying to get together with everyone, see what we can do to do that analysis, apply an old analysis, or maybe work as a team to cover both West and Central Basin as we did in the past. Additionally, we've had on the potable side, there's been some big nitrification issues for a few of our customers. We immediately responded. We've engaged with MWD. They've been flushing. Some of you are in districts where you're seeing that. Seems unfortunate, all this rain this year, but because of the lower water use, and people watering a lot less and that water sitting in the pipes, they've had to really take some action. And we've been giving daily updates to our customers, moving to twice a week now. I just met with someone from MWD today, and all that seems to be going quite successfully. We had we've been doing some extra work on our lime silos. We had some incidents occur where we had loading issues. AQMD responded. We responded back to them, no violations. However, it's making us take a look at how we do the loading and unloading. This is one of those interesting notes where we're seeing in the industry supply chain issues and also still labor issues, where a lot of our vendors who deliver or pick up things, they want to see things turn around quicker. So where in the past we might have had a few hours, they want to turn things around, and that sometimes can create issues. So we're working operationally with staff on things like that, and this is a great example. Good work by the operations team. In the distribution side, like everywhere, there's been still some musical chairs. So we have almost a new team on the distribution contract operations. We met with some of that team, getting to know them, looking at the deliverables and making sure it's kind of a good way to start fresh on that. And then also I have further down there, there's some fee increases by the regional board. Those shouldn't impact us greatly, shouldn't require a budget adjustment. There'll be a public hearing. We may make a comment, but we'll keep you informed on that. And I know we always do, this is always a look back, but just as a heads up of things we're just real time dealing with, have to do with issues that are also part of some of the projects the board has moved forward. So with some of our filter projects and our solids, we've had some issues with media breakthrough and sand that's requiring us to have maintenance go daily to clean out some of the Able pumps in the solids building. So again, once these projects are complete, that'll be some maintenance that will be reduced and also preserving of some of our pumps. And at the same time, the pumps, the booster pumps, 2 of the 3 booster pumps that push water to our high rate clarifiers, they also, the propellers are corroded, so we're moving really quick. Those are the kind of things that are not necessarily on the shelf. So we're moving really quick to work to get those replaced. We have some rentals in there. If you go down there, you might see those, but everyone's done a great job. The team's really good at that response. And all of those things, I think, as we move forward with some of these projects, will be preventable in the future. With that, if the board would like to see the presentation, happy to move to that.
Sure.
Right. We have page 64. Thank you. So this is our beginning of the water quality report. As you can see, for the month of August, the water quality turbidity-wise, we have moved down, average 28. I think it came down from upper 30s previous month, July. And so in terms of type, suspended solids, however, it remains the same as the month of July. We're still averaging, we still see solids in the upper 20s to mid 30s. So the average came about 32 for the month of August. Next slide, sorry. This is the suspended solid slide, so you can move to the next slide. As Lucy mentioned, there have been a lot of activities at the plant with the lime silo, and there were a couple of accidents that caused airbag issues. So for the month of August, it was a busy month for operations and plenty of opportunities to allow us to look at things and to review SOPs. So here, most of the activities highlighted here happened at ECL. The team was busy troubleshooting some ferrochloride control panel issues, and again, we mentioned about the lime silo. We have a team looking at and making sure PMs are done correctly, and all the PMs are done, and troubleshooting some of those issues. The next photo over our favorite assets, the dewatering building. The team was unplugging some drain line. And then lastly, the team continued to place new lines at our facility at ECL. Next slide, please. So here's a new reporting format for the recycled water production. We're using this. This is taken from the finance committee reports, just so that we can align with the potable water sales report, which you see there. From here, you can see for the month of August, compared to last fiscal year, we're above production compared to both July and August. And if you want to dial into the details, next slide, you can see where make the difference. Here, I just want to highlight the main contribution to higher production in August compared to last year's barrier. We're up to 847 acre feet. 775, sorry, but budgeted 847 as we were still working out some membrane issues and compression issues. So hopefully this month we will improve further. And then another ones to highlight is the disinfected tertiary irrigation production. That one was a lot different from budget. We believe that was impacted by Hurricane Hillary. So the usage for recycled water was a lot lower for that month. Overall, however, we're about 5% different from the budget. So that's improved from last year at this time. Next slide, please. This is, again, a more detailed look at sales from last year compared to this year and to last year. So you can see, again, from this slide, barrier was a lot higher compared to last year at this time. So that's good news. And we're pretty much meeting about 90% of injection, the county target. So at this point. Next slide, please. Here's environmental compliance report, and last month was a busy month for compliance team, lots of quarterly reporting, and so you can see that we had a lot of analysis done, over 2,000 samples done, and that's it for here. No questions. I'll turn it over to Frank for the remainder.
Thank you, Susanna. Good afternoon, directors. You can go to the next slide, please. This is our monthly update for potable water customer service. Starting off with Metropolitan Water District customer projects and shutdowns. For WB23, that's a new service connection for Golden State Water Company that Metropolitan Water District will construct. Metropolitan anticipates advertising for bids by the end of this year, and they anticipate this service being online by May 2025. For WB31, that was a shutdown that Metropolitan Water District had requested for nitrification control, but it has since been canceled since the water quality has improved in that West Coast feeder. For WB26, this is a switch from service connection WB26 to WB26C that Metropolitan Water District is requesting that would affect the county. This is due to some construction work that Metropolitan Water District is scheduling for their Sepulveda feeder. And so we're working with both the county and Metropolitan Water District to try to schedule that switchover. For the Title 22 Purveyor Service Program, the third quarter sampling has been completed and the results for those samples are pending. So next slide, please. So this is the slide that was requested in one of the previous meetings. This is the potable water sales for August, July and August. The total sales for August were lower than the budget. And again, we attribute this, or we believe that this is attributed to the Hurricane Hillary. There were 3 inches of rain as a result of that storm. So moving on to the next slide. This is also our monthly update for the recycled water distribution system activities. We did have one leak repair early in August, which I'll discuss in the next slide. Also just wanted to highlight that Infomark has been working on increasing the number of valves that they exercise per month. So they were able to get 46 done last August. Moving on to the next slide. It's just continuation of the distribution system activities. As I mentioned, we did have one leak repair in August. There were 2 air valves that were hit in El Segundo. These air valves serve the high pressure boiler feed and the low pressure boiler feed for Chevron. Those services were replaced and the air valves have been repaired. The contractor has not submitted the final cost for the work yet, but if the cost exceeds the $35,000 threshold, we will bring that cost back to the board for ratification. And then finally, go to the next slide. This is just an update on one of our new sites that we're working with to connect to recycled water. This is the Hollywood Park Residential in Inglewood. It's part of the SoFi Stadium development, and they'll be using recycled water for irrigation of their landscaping. And this site is just pending the final cross connection test to ensure the site is safe to use recycled water, and we anticipate that they'll connect in October of this year. That concludes our report. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?
Well, thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Director Gray, any questions? Okay, I don't have any questions either. Thank you very much. With that, I think we're pretty close to the end of our agenda. We don't have a closed session item, director comments, and future agenda items. Director Williams.
No, thank you.
Here.
Good meeting, very efficient.
Director Gray. Okay, well, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you all.